Now let me go ahead and do the same exercise from the public VM. But for that, I'll have to change the public network access. I've changed it anyway. I can see it now. So my laptop access is enabled. Let's select enable from all networks and save it. So this is my VM, which is Ubuntu server, and I have both Azure CLI and AZ copy installed here. I have already given the commands how to install both Azure CLI and AZ copy in Ubuntu. Alright, so now I do not have any text files. Let me go ahead and create a text file. This is the first file. I'll have to use the SAS token here also. So the exact same command that I had used from my laptop would be used here also, except for the fact that the name of the file is different. We'll have to provide the SAS token here also. As expected, it has been completed. So I should be having this pub vm1.txt. In this case, all the network was allowed, meaning internet was allowed. Now let's try to enable from selected networks. I'll try to add the IP address or the public IP address of the VM. So this is the IP address. This is the second file. Let's try to copy. And I have already got the error, which is authentication or authorization failed. The reason is because the public IP address that I had mentioned was not recognized. Now, instead of the IP address, let's try to add the virtual network here itself. I'll add a virtual network and I'll be using the service endpoint. So this would be the virtual network and there are multiple subnets. I'll be selecting all the subnets and let's enable it. So all the service endpoints have been enabled. Now let's add it. So this has been added. 3 subnets have been added. Now if I refresh, I'm not able to see this because in the public network, I did not add my IP address. I have changed it. Now I should be able to see the files here. It'll take some time. So I have the pub VM1 file. Now let's try to upload this file using the service endpoint. The moment I added the service endpoint, it was completed. I should be able to see the file here, which is pub VM2. So it has been uploaded. So all the 3 testing are done. First, I enabled public access from all. So I was able to upload from the Azure VM in public subnet. Then I disabled public access and I just provided the IP address or public IP address of the VM. It did not work. Then I enabled service endpoint and it did work. So there's 2 more pending. The first one would be the enabling public access and private endpoint both. At the same time, we'll just have the public VM IP added. So I'll add a private endpoint, but I'll remove service endpoint. I'll add private endpoint and I'll add the public VM IP. Now what should happen in this case that because I add private endpoint, the upload would happen via the private endpoint, even though I add the public VM IP. So this service endpoint got added to the virtual network. Let me open the virtual network. I'll be removing the service endpoint from the VNet and then I'll do the testing. To remove it, we'll have to go to the VM, scroll down and we have service endpoint here. So you see there are 2 service endpoints which got created. This is the one that got just created. So click here and then delete this service endpoint. The reason I'm doing it from the VM because service endpoints are associated with the VM rather than the storage account. Now this service endpoint is gone. I should not be able to see the service endpoint here also because I have removed it from the VM. Sorry, let me go to the storage account again. Now you see the endpoint status are disabled, so will not be able to use the service endpoint. Now what will I do is that I'll keep it as is. Now I have added the IP address of the VM in the allowed IPv4 address, and last time when I allowed it, I was not able to upload the file, but this time I'm keeping it as is. So the public access is enabled and I have enabled from selected networks. The service endpoint is disabled, it is not working anymore. And I have just added the IPv4 address of the public VM. Let me save it. And now I'll add a private endpoint also. Now to do that, I'll have to create a private endpoint. It's a separate resource altogether. And this is the name 3am storage account private endpoint. I'll have to mention a target sub resource First, the resource type is storage accounts, and the sub resource can be either blob, table, queue, file, or web. So it has to be blob. Then the virtual network. I'll have to select the virtual network for sure. Why are we selecting the virtual network? Because the private endpoint would be created in the virtual network. If we use private endpoint, it would feel like that the storage account itself is inside of the VNet. So now when I enable private endpoint and when I mention the VNet and the subnet, the private endpoint is created inside of the subnet. Now notice here that I have selected private subnet, not the public subnet. It does not matter as long as it is inside of the VNet or the VNet is same as that of the public VM that we are using. So that's it. DNS is not needed. By default, it is created. Tag is not needed. And then let us go ahead and create the private endpoint. Validation is done. Let's create the endpoint. What we have done, we have enabled private endpoint, and in the public access firewall rule, I have mentioned the IP address or the public IP address of the Azure public VM that I'm using. Last time when I did it without the private endpoint, I was not able to upload the file. I was not able to upload the file from my public VM to the storage account or the storage account container, even though the public network firewall rule was allowing the public IP address of the VM. Now I have created a private endpoint. Now let's see what happens. Now this is the file public VM3 or pub VM3. Now it got completed because this time around it used the private endpoint rather than the public IP address. Now I should be able to see the file inside of the container, but I can't because in public access I have just allowed the IP address of the public VM. I'll have to change it and let me show you. So I have added my IP address. Now I should be able to see the files here after some time. Now as you can see, the pub VM3 file has been uploaded via the private endpoint. And now what will I do? I will change the security again or the firewall rules again, in which case I'll disable the public network access completely. And once it is done, I should not be able to see the container from my machine also. Now if I refresh, I should get error. And as you can see, the request is not authorized because public access is completely disabled. This is the new file public vm4.txt, and let me try to copy this file, and this file should be copied over using the private endpoint, and you see it has been completed. And if I have to see it, of course, I'll have to enable the public access again from my laptop, and then we'll be able to see the public vm4.txt file in the container. Alright, as you can see, public vm4.txt has been uploaded. So even though the public access was denied, the public VM was able to upload the object or the blob in the storage account container because private endpoint was enabled. So we have done the second part of the testing also using public VM, and let us go ahead and do the final testing using private VM. Of course, if you use private VM, there cannot be any public access. We'll only have private endpoint. So using private endpoint and inside of the private VM, we should be able to upload the file. If the private endpoint is not there, the upload should fail.